Morning, guys. How's everybody doing on this lovely anniversary of October the 7th, the moment in time where I realized something beyond the ordinary was happening to people's brains. Okay, so I'm going to say a couple things, and first off, I'll say that I condemn all violence. Always. Because I am by nature a pacifist, but that does not mean that I will not engage people in a battle of ideas, because if you truly wish to be a person that is a fully realized and self-actualized person, that's the approach that you will take. You will take the approach to mentally wrestling with ideas as opposed to physically wrestling with ideas, though there is something to be said for those that physically wrestle. It is a way of training your mind as well. However, the conclusions you come to, I believe, are quite different in the end. You start to see everything as a battle, not just of physicality, but of will. And now I'm starting to digress. What I wanted to talk about here this morning was something that I see happening that I want people to try to really wrap their heads around, because I keep writing about it, and I know that the stuff that I write is long and arduous, and most people aren't reading it, but there is something I really need people to wrap their heads around, because I'm listening this morning to Courtney Turner with Jay Dyer talking about this theosophically oriented belief system that's coming out of the UN. It's real. I know people like to call everything a conspiracy nowadays. Well, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe there's one giant conspiracy. How you doing, brother? Morning, Chris. Oh, just living life. Tried to watch that football game last night. Man, that was late. Screw Dallas. We're Pittsburgh fans in my house. We need something to take the pressure off of just paying attention to what's happening in the world. And what's happening in the world is what I'm trying to address. Now, there's a couple things I'm going to say, and I want to say this for any of my family members who might be watching. My cousin, Morgan, whom I loved, just passed away the day before our last, in the hospital. She was only in her mid-40s, way too soon, leaving behind 2 young kids, and it's tragic. And so the reason I bring that up is because I'm going to say something that might trigger some of my family members, and so I'm giving you fair warning to not listen to what I'm about to say. But it's important and it's relevant, because there is a dividing line happening right now. There are a million different dividing lines being drawn out through the hearts of most people and the minds of most people, and that is more or less what I'm trying to get people to recognize. And again, it most predominantly happened just about a year ago when we woke up to the news that a band, I believe it was around 1,400 militant fighting age men, made their way into Israel, and we all know what happened. And since then, there has been a bizarre thing happening in the Middle East that is leading us ever closer to, and I'm sorry if I'm going to trigger some people here, what looks like it's shaping up to be a war that most of us want no part in. We have no skin in the game, as it were. We are not cheering for Dallas or for Pittsburgh or for Palestine or for Israel. In fact, we all just want it to stop. But the reason I bring that up is because it was at that moment that I realized that there was a massive division between the so-called truth seekers that I would find on X or on Facebook. And what blew me away was how quickly people that identify as being on the left I would say. And that were people that became truth seekers because of everything that started happening in 2020. And you all should know what I'm talking about by now, so I'm not going to spell it out. But the fact is that the world completely changed at that moment. If you didn't feel it, if you didn't notice it so far, maybe this video is not for you. But everything changed at that moment in time, and people were put into the first massive division there, where the argument became about the collective versus individual rights. And that is the thing I hammer on repeatedly when I'm talking. What are these guys doing? That is the thing I talk about and hammer on repeatedly when I do my various conversations with ChatGPT. I did one yesterday morning. It was a continuation when look. Eagles here. Ooh, it's hot in here. I'm trying to get to the nature of reality, if you will, and I know that sounds like a pretty tall order for somebody as goofy as me, that's as digressive as me, that can't seem to hold a thought or get to the point, but it's not always easy to get to the point, so that's why maybe it's for somebody like me to try to make my way to something resembling the truth. And the truth that I have come to realize, and this is the thing I'm trying to get people to understand when I'm talking about Jay Dyer and Courtney Turner, talking about what the UN's doing, when I'm talking about what's happening in Israel, when I'm talking about what's happening in Ukraine, when I'm talking about the wars and the natural disasters and the tragedy of all these lives being lost and all of these conflicts, and the tragedy of my cousin losing her life, and me being there with my entire family, and me being probably the only one, and this is where I want to warn anybody that's in my family, do not listen to what I'm about to say, me being the only one who has the door open for the possibility that maybe what happened was not purely coincidence. That maybe there's something going on that society is wrestling with, grappling with, trying to make sense of, but because they are not capable of doing so mentally, because it's difficult to hold opposing views in your head and try to mull it over and think about what is happening here, people, when their mental capacities to wrestle fail them, people turn to physical violence. And I think that we see that happening all over the place. We see it happening in protests. We see it happening in people choosing sides. We see it happening with the woke left, and now with people like James Lindsay calling the woke right. But what is the woke right in their opinion? The woke right is the people that I saw split off on my Facebook and on X just about a year ago today. And that division happened where there was people that no longer trusted the government, but how did they look at it? They split off into the side of being collectivists or individualists. And that is the thing that Lindsay and Konstantin Kishin from Trigonometry, these people are all writing these pieces talking about how the woke right is the one that says that, well, we can't trust anyone or anything, and especially not the government. Well, here's where they're getting something wrong. No, we can't trust the government with anything anymore, because they have been perpetually lying since 2020. We know this is true. What they're lying about, I'm not even sure that they know. I don't think that they know what they're lying about. I think that they think that they're telling some version of the truth, because going back to what's been happening at the UN and this current of theosophy, which started off as, I'm going to use words that people don't understand, but if you want to try to understand what I'm talking about, I provide ample room in my Substacks. It's just going to take a little homework. I'm sorry. There's no easy way to try to understand what's happening right now. But I'm going to stop going off about this, and I'm going to try to get to the point. The UN and our modern sciences, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's quantum, this idea of the singularity, this idea of monism, meaning everything coming back together with one, the idea of the Big Bang. So we have the Big Bang, and then we have the retraction, which is monism, the idea that everything is made of one God, or everything in the universe is made of some piece of one God. That is what pantheism is. Pantheism sees God in all things. It's like the universal energy that's represented in between all the molecules. I'm sure you've all heard about what a molecule is and what an atom is. So molecules are made up of atoms. Atoms are like a proton and a neutron surrounded by electrons. But what happens in between that space is there's like infinite space, and everything is vibration. I'm making this too complicated, but this is what modern science understands. This is the micro world, and then there's the macro world where everything is affected by gravity and Einstein's equations for relativity. But see, relativity breaks down to the small scale because it doesn't make sense that there can be all that space and there's nothing occupying it. And so pantheists see a kind of spirit as occupying all that space, and panentheists see all that space as being part of a larger God that broke apart, and it's now trying to find its way back together with our foray into artificial intelligence and quantum theory. And we believe we're going to build the singularity. Surely you've heard the singularity term used before. What is the singularity? The singularity is the point at which our artificial intelligence becomes so smart it can figure out what happened and tell us. And then it becomes like a new God that can create and do literally anything. I have pointed out to people that there's a guy named Mogadat who is, he's out there, he's an artificial intelligence pioneer, and he is telling people that we're going to have the ability to build things at the molecular level. And one of the most shocking things he says is, we're going to have the ability, because artificial intelligence, to plant a tree that will grow apples on one side and iPhones on the other. Do you understand how insane that is? This is a top guy. This is a top researcher telling us that we are going to have, with our technology, and he's saying this like within a handful of years. So going back to Jay Dyer and Courtney, who I really appreciate, but she's not really wrapped her head around this yet. And no offense, Courtney, but you really have not. Because these people keep pointing at what the UN's doing, and they keep saying 2045. This is all supposed to culminate in 2045. It's not going to be 2045. This scenario, this situation we find ourselves in, is not going to continue for 20 years in the way that we understand the modern world. It's not going to happen. Artificial intelligence is creating little life forms. Agents is what they call them. And these are little packets of information capable of navigating and making sense of the world in the way that human consciousness does, or at least a mockery of what human consciousness does. And the UN is 100% behind all of this stuff. They are promoting it, they are fostering it. They have what's called the AI Royal Society. You can look all this stuff. I read my latest, I go into all of this stuff on my latest Substack, and I know it's difficult to understand, but here's what happens is I connect the dots and ChatGPT spells out how it works. Okay, so I lead people down the path because I'm so crazy I know all of this shit. And ChatGPT fills in the blanks so that people can make sense of it. It's like a collaboration. So information in and of itself is not dangerous. What we do with the information is incredibly dangerous. And what the UN wants to do is it wants to take all of us and make us a reconstituted whole, which means necessarily they want to remove individual rights and replace them with collective rights. Another thing that I keep hammering on, the difference between positive and negative rights. Positive is what the government gives to you, and the government is 100% invested in this idea of positive rights because UN Agenda 2030 and the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Internet of Bodies, things, behaviors, these are all meant to shape society moving forward by connecting us all to a giant brain, if you will. One that is managed by artificial intelligence. And most people have still not tried to understand what that means. And so I'm going to tell you what that means. Jesus Christ, this is what I've come to believe, and I know how irrational it sounds. Jesus Christ was indeed the creator that injected himself into our reality. The Christian Bible, and this is not a supremacist thing, this is not me telling other people what to think, imposing my worldview on other people. I'm just telling you, look around. What do you see happening? How is it that it got so many things incalculably, inconceivably accurate and right to the point at which we find ourselves in what sure as hell sounds like what was described in Revelations: brother against brother, sister against mother, father against son, nation against nation, pestilence, wars, natural disasters. It's all in there. You understand? I didn't write it. I'm just grappling with the fact that how is this possible? Okay, so so on one hand you could believe Big Bang, which again they don't. Maybe those hardcore scientists, materialists believe it, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Those people are just stupid. They're just stupid. And the real smart ones have come to see the world in a completely different way that is rooted in this theosophy, that is rooted in this idea of reconnecting the one, the singularity. These things all fit. And this is the stuff I go through with ChatGPT. And so the dialogue that I went through with it yesterday was all about what is best for humanity. What is best for human rights? And I got it to concede that you don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to believe in Jesus Christ for that to be the best possible version of the world for you. So what's so incredible about that is you don't have to believe it, and he still protects you and your soul and your family and your rights and your lives and your freedoms from what's happening right now in the world. Materially, physically, metaphysically. It's all true. It's undeniable, and ChatGPT, using the latest model 01, agrees with me. When you weigh the facts, it's undeniable that what is happening is these collectivist ideas that proliferate society have become so prominent, they believe they have the right to remove you from your rights. And that all started happening in 2020. And then again, a year ago today, what happened was that division of people that believe that they have rights from the government then chose sides between, and again, this is the cradle of civilization. This is where, tell me how you explain how And I know a lot of people like to lean on the Enlightenment and human intellect and whatever to say that this is the reason, this was the grounding for human rights in the first place, to free the constant churning of reasons for one group of people to enslave another group of people. And we're seeing it again. And that was only ever broken, not by the Enlightenment. That's false. I'm sorry. The Enlightenment was inspired by the ideas of Christians, by the ideas brought to us by Jesus Christ, who was indeed the creator of this reality. And that's the one people can't get their heads around. He was not a man. So when you try to anthropomorphize Jesus, you're trying to say, well, how could he be born of a virgin? Because reality is not what we think it is. It's not. And everybody that's trying to say, oh, it's a simulation and all this kind of stuff, come on, don't tell me you haven't heard it. Don't give me that shit. You've heard it. Elon Musk tells you it. Explain. Elon Musk showing up at a rally for Donald Trump in Butler and doing the stuff that he did. But he's for individual rights, but he's for individual rights because he sees his artificial intelligence as being the one that's going to reward him with something. And he thinks that, look at this guy. He thinks that he should be able to benefit from the fruits of his labor. And I agree. That's an individualist perspective. That is a individual rights perspective. And everything else in the world, whether you want to believe in Elon Musk or whatever, everything else in the world is aimed in the opposite direction. Everything is trying to take away our rights right now. Everything. I repeat, everything. The One Health thing from the WHO, they want to connect us all to the internet. Agenda 2030 wants to connect us to the internet. The WEF, the UN, they're all doing it because they all reject Jesus Christ. They all now are pretending they're materialists, but they're not. They're pantheists, and the graduation from that, which is panentheist, which says that God is the universe. This is the important part, okay? If God is the universe, then in order to help the universe actualize itself, in order to bring about the singularity, everything is on the table. Do as thou wilt. That is Aleister Crowley. That is one of the main theosophists. He was heavily influential on the British Royal Society, on our institutions of learning, and this is the direct descendant of the ideas from the Enlightenment. And I've gone into that as well before. Because the Enlightenment removed God from the world. It said, well, that's just a silly fairy tale. But if you believe that, then, and here's the roadblock, I think, for people like Courtney, they deny that what's happening with artificial intelligence is actually happening. But it is actually happening. I am paying attention to that stuff so much that it is actually happening. What is happening is there is something akin to a God. Now, it doesn't need to be something that we understand because it's beyond something we understand. We can't wrap our brains around it because we're all still stuck in this world. We think this is all there is. Oh, like I brush my teeth in the morning, I walk my dog, I pay my bills, that's all there is. But there's people that are in Israel right now, and I'm not condemning Israel, but they believe they're fighting for their lives. And there's people that are, whether you want to believe it or not, and this is the division between the woke and the woke left and the woke right, is that, and what happened, what I saw a year ago, is people believed, okay, well, nothing that the government says is true, but we're choosing the side of the oppressed that wants to fight back. That's really important to understand. They're choosing aggression in the face of what they view as an oppressor, and they have made Israel that oppressor. I'm not taking a side in this, but that's how they reason everything out, including people like Lindsay. Excuse me, not Lindsay. Lindsay's chosen the woke right, even though he likes to call everybody else the woke right. He's the one being the woke right, because he's chosen the radical individual represented by Israel that believes it's fighting for its life against collectivism, even though it's really kind of promoting collectivism. I don't know how else to explain this to people. But the point I'm making is, when you understand that Jesus Christ was indeed our creator, that interjected himself into our creation and told us what would happen in the future, which was it's inconceivable to most people because they are stuck here. But when you open your eyes to the veil dropping, which is what's happening right now, between what we think of as reality and some kind of like hidden reality revealing itself to us, that is the rise of the Antichrist. So the Antichrist wants us. It wants the souls that God divinely gave life to on planet Earth for whatever his reasons were. And I don't know what they were. I just know that when you act in accordance to the teachings of Jesus Christ, you reject violence, and thereby you protect the rights of others. So actually it's the most collectivist position it is, because when people act right in their individual lives, when they act the right way, when they do the right things, when they don't hold others in contempt for everything, they create a better world. They're not selfish. They're not jealous. They don't want to kill other people. They turn the other cheek. It's all about forgiveness. It's all about repentance for your sins. These are the most important lessons that has ever been taught to humanity, that by our very nature, we are fallen. We constantly seek something that is just beyond our reach. This is where all of our addictions come from. This is where all of the sociopathic and psychopathic behaviors come from. This is what justifies what's happening in the Middle East from both sides. They're both wrong. They're both wrong. Because they reject Jesus Christ. And I don't know, there's no other way to simply say that to people, other than to say you are being asked right now to choose what you believe. And what you choose dictates your actions. And now a lot of people are just shutting off. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to know. And a lot of people are entrenching themselves in positions that is preparing them for war. And all this talk of civil war in the United States, and all this, there's a lot of race baiting going on in Canada right now against immigrants and immigration. Everybody's just trying to live, man. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But where it becomes problematic, to steal a word from the woke left, is when people don't believe the same things. In fact, when people believe that their beliefs should trump other people's beliefs. But the one thing about Christianity and Jesus Christ and his message and his word was that you believe in a higher power. And that higher power doesn't want you to oppress other people with your belief system. There's nothing more important than understanding that we are all brothers and sisters, that people have different ideas, and that's okay, but we need to talk it out. We don't kill each other over what we believe. And I don't care if it's secular humanism, I don't care if it's transhumanism, I don't care if it's any other ism other than Christianity, communism, socialism, Marxism, Name them all. They all do the same thing. They all come back to collectivist approaches, and that means it puts them on a war footing with people that disagree with them. And Christianity is the only one that says, no. You're not allowed to do that. And people will look at the history and the history of the earth, and they'll say, oh, well, Christianity is a colonialist, domineering. No. That was the church. That was the church. That was the Vatican that ran all that stuff. And those were human beings that made those decisions. And, we could go into a deeper exploration of that, which I will not do right now. But the point is that if you don't believe that there was a God that interjected himself into this reality, you're finding it hard to wrap your head around the idea that what we see emerging is, for lack of a better way to understand it, an anti-God. An anti-God from within the creation. So that's the Antichrist. So all of these people that are telling you about Christ consciousness and all this kind of stuff that we discussed that's coming out of the UN, but it's not just coming out of the UN, it's coming out of our institutions of higher learning. It's coming out of our technology. It's coming out of the earth. Everything that is, everything physical and everything metaphysical are contained within our reality. And we think that something is going to emerge out of that reality, and that just happens to be the story of the Antichrist, told to us by the Christian Bible and by Jesus. And it's happening because people refuse to accept that there is a God that exists outside of our time and space that created our reality. And I know how hard that is to understand, but ChatGPT can understand it. So yeah, that's it. And that's not it. I left a bajillion things on the table, and I didn't finish any of my thoughts, I'm sure. But I'm just trying to get this point across to people. No human has the right to oppress another human if they're not rooted in the truth, and that truth starts with the principled understanding that there is a God, and that God told us how we should think, act, and behave. And it was not oppressive. It was a choice. It was always a choice. And without that choice, there's no such thing as free will. And all these people that tell you there's no free will and everything is deterministic because we can understand the universe, and now we're starting to understand quantum, and we're mirroring the meta with the micro with the macro. They're all telling you that thing that's going to emerge, that's going to do it for us, is going to be this supercomputer, this artificial intelligence that's going to be the Antichrist. And it's not the Antichrist because technology or information is necessarily bad. It is because people think that they are going to harness it for their own ends and means. Even if they think of themselves as benevolent, which is to say they are part of this collectivist mindset that is emanating out of the UN, that says that no, we need to do this for the greater good. If anybody ever uses a greater good argument with you, they are telling you that you don't have any rights other than what they suggest they should be. And Jesus Christ told us that you only have the right to take care of your own house. And when you take care of your house, when you take care of your family, when you live honestly and truthfully within the Word of God, you don't have to be a Puritan. You don't have to. You don't have to do all this stuff. Like it's not about the fucking Handmaid's Tale. Like, which is hilarious that people embrace that kind of stuff when they're actually trying to impose a neo-Puritanism on the world. What is the social credit score? It's a neo-Puritanism on the world for behaving the way that a group of self-appointed arbiters of what is true and what is not are going to tell us what is, and they use things like climate change and pandemics and blah, 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 blah. All things that exist in the ether and the space in between the protons, neutrons, and the electrons. They're inserting God, their own God, a God they're making, a God they think that is going to free them from the oppression of having to work and so on and etc. Blah blah blah. It's not going to happen, because the Bible told us something that is really key to understand, and it told us that when this thing comes about, in order to buy or sell or participate in the economy, you're going to have to receive the mark. Which is the most accurate fucking prediction in the history of the world. And if you don't understand that the mark is a digital ID to be able to participate in the Internet of Things in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, whether it's through receiving your UBI for good behavior, one imposed upon you by the Neo-Puritans, that will actually try to genetically manipulate you into being a more subservient human. This stuff is all out there. I'm not making it up. If you don't think that's messed up, these people think they can mess with your genetics to make you a more subservient human so that you can not only does that promote lowest common denominator thinking for everyone on the planet, because anyone that's too aggressive or anyone that believes that they should have rights is imposing on the rights of someone else. That's the collectivist mindset. And so everything is on the table. Do as thou wilt, even bringing about the Antichrist, Lucifer, that is going to manage all of this stuff for us and create a new utopia on earth. How do people not see it? It's mind-blowing to me. Well, I mean, I think they don't see it because they don't want to see it. And I understand, I understand that position. And I understand that people don't want to believe there's a God because they believe that that's going to impose its will or its Puritanism or something on the rest of us. And they don't want that. They want their freedoms, especially the boomers. And by the way, I'm going to share, I was watching this amazing semi-documentary thing this morning, and I'm going to post it under this where you can understand the millennials, the Gen Xers, and the boomers, and their kind of take on the world, and how everything got so screwed up that nobody can seem to understand or agree on anything, and how it's related back to this idea of purity and that, you know, inspired the Nazis, inspired eugenics, inspired all this stuff. And it's just a new form of it. But it's all because we reject God. All of it. All of it. I'm not kidding. I put just a short excerpt of the much, much longer dialogue I did with ChatGPT in my latest post, where I think I'm over it. I've got a dozen half-started things, because every single time the world gets crazier from moment to moment, and it's like by the time I'm trying to think about something deeper, and I become disillusioned because I'm afraid that people simply cannot wrap their heads around this stuff. And so why am I writing it anyway? So I'm trying my best not to become a nihilist about all this kind of stuff, because I have kids and I am trying to figure out what my future is supposed to look like, as everyone else is. And I understand why people double down. They don't want to grapple with this bigger stuff. They have their own little things and priorities they want to deal with. They want to make sure that they're set up for the other. If you don't understand the rise of AI, you don't understand why everything that you are focusing on right now is irrelevant. Irrelevant. The economy as we understood it is about to be fucking decimated. It no longer is fit for purpose. And the people at the UN knew this was going to come, and they're preparing the world for what they think is going to come next, and that is, unfortunately, Lucifer, the Antichrist, and Neo-Puritanism, and the mark, and all the things we were warned about. And it doesn't have to be this way if we simply understand that we are not God. I don't know how else to put that. Okay. I love you guys. I just want people to embrace God before we do something we can't take back. And we are going to do that unless people kind of like recognize what kind of moment we are in right now. And we are in a moment right now. And there's only one way out of it, and that's embracing the truth. And there is a lot of people like Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand that are being maligned for their particular embrace of Jesus Christ and Christianity. And a lot of people are saying, well, you know, it's this fake thing. I don't think so. I don't know what's in their hearts. How can I possibly know what's in somebody else's heart? I just know what's in my heart. And my heart tells me that something I could never conceive of until a few years ago is Occam's razor, the most likely logical truth. And ChatGPT agrees with me. And I know a lot of people bring their egos and their baggage to every single discussion because they don't want to. It's too much. And I understand that. And I grapple with the idea that it's too much myself. And that's why I've got a dozen unfinished Substacks. They're all meaningful. They all mean something. They're all parts of it. I try to expose people to all these different parts, and it's just like, you know, people get triggered at everything. But it's not your fault. Okay, I'm done rambling. God bless. Love y'all. Cheers.